my friend, my brother, Jim Trotter of The Athletic, en route, literally en route, on a layover at Detroit Metro Airport, en route to Cleveland to receive the Bill Nunn Award at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And the Nunn Award, of course, given to a reporter who has made a long and distinguished contribution to pro football through coverage. It's named for Bill Nunn, who Jim and I have a ton of respect for. He was a Hall of Fame scout. I mean, one of the greatest, if not the greatest scouts in NFL history for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But before that, he worked 22 years as a fearless reporter and columnist for the Pittsburgh Courier. So I say that to say I don't know anybody who better exemplifies what Bill Nunn stood for than a man who literally stood up for what he believed in, stood up for what is right. And my main man, Jim Trotter. Jim, appreciate you taking some time, skipping on the layover meal to talk to me. What are you going to say when you receive the Nunn Award? Because I know you're going to keep it real.
Yeah, I think, Michael, what it is it's a lot of what you just said. You know, when we get into this business as journalists, we don't get in it for awards. And in fact, it makes me a little uncomfortable even receiving one because I was always taught in college that we're supposed to report the news, not be the news. But what makes it special are two things. Number one, it was voted on by our colleagues. So that makes it special that they would feel I was deserving of this. But then number two, it's because of the man whose name is on the award. And Bill Nunn fought and challenged authority figures to be better and do better, to level the playing field in the NFL. And really over the last 7 years or so of my career, that's really what I've been about, is trying to challenge authority to say, do better, be better as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion, particularly when it relates to the hiring of head coaches.
I love that. So it's not about you. So when you receive this basically career lifetime achievement award, it sounds like you're going to make it about Bill Nunn and what he stood for and the principles that all of us should be standing up for.
Yeah, absolutely. No question, Michael. I mean, that's part of my speech. And then also to recognize the people who opened the door for me. Guys like the late Ralph Wiley, the late Brian Burwell, guys like Bill Roden, Michael Wilbon, Jared Bell. You know, to recognize those guys who came before me and showed me that it was possible for a young Black kid to actually grow up and be a sports writer, to live his dream that way. So really this whole thing, honestly, is about these individuals and not about me. And then ultimately, part of what I want to address as well is just this whole thing about, as you get older, what your purpose is, and particularly what your purpose is in this business, because I'm going to be in a room full of men whose legacies are as the greatest of the game. And I may not have a legacy, but I do feel I have a purpose. And that purpose is to try and use my voice and to use my platforms to be a voice for those whose voices aren't being heard. And as long as I have left in this business, that's where I'm going to be focused.
Hey, man, those guys opened the door for you. Same way you held it open for me. I go back with you when I was a young pup and you were at the San Diego Union Tribune holding it down, of course, before you went on to Sports Illustrated, NFL media.
I still remember the first time I ever saw you. Really, it's the first time I ever heard you. We were in the Raiders press room up in Alameda, and all of a sudden I'm in the back of the room, and I hear this booming voice, you know, in the middle of the press room. It kind of rose up. I was like, man, who is that? Okay. And then I found out how young you were and whatnot. I'm like, damn, this brother's on the fast track, so he's doing it right. And sure enough, you were on the fast track. You were doing it right, and we see why you are where you are today.
I appreciate that, man. I watched you. I kept good company, and I kept wise counsel. But the elephant in the room, though, Jim. I mean, is it at all going to be awkward for you? How's it going to feel, given how things just recently ended at NFL media? You might even be in the presence of some of the people you just worked with and for at the league that you just challenged at the league before moving on to the Athletic. Like, any awkwardness, any tension? Like, if there is, how are you going to handle that?
Yeah, no, there's none of that for me. That's why it's kind of funny. People keep bringing that up. And the questions that I was asking were not personal. They were strictly professional. And all I was asking is that if you publicly state that this is what you are about, and the data shows that that is not what you are about, how do we balance those two things? So I have no animus towards Roger Goodell or anyone else at the league office or NFL Network. I was simply doing my job, and so
Yeah.
it's not gonna be awkward for me at all. I can't speak
Right.
for
Not for
them.
you. Exactly. You
Yeah,
know what? You're right. That's the right way. Of course, that's right. It might be weird for them because you were in the right. you were on the side of
yeah.
right. So ain't nothing for you to be uncomfortable about. I love it. I love it. But I'll ask you this because, and you've said this a bunch of times, that you were speaking out and you've spoken out behind closed doors and, of
Yeah.
course, at the Super Bowl press conference about diversity in the newsroom at the management level, on the news desk, the decision-making level, not just on camera, but behind the scenes in a league where its players are majority black. Two-part question. I wonder, what have the players said to you behind closed doors about how they're covered without that diversity behind the scenes? And secondly, like, where do they come in when it comes to taking a stand for better diversity and representation when it comes to how the NFL stories are told? Because there is no NFL without black players. You and I both know that. And this league is built and continues to
Um,
thrive off of black players. So where are they in this fight that you took up?
Look, Michael, they don't even stand up for themselves as it relates to collective bargaining issues. So I was never expecting players to stand up and be a part of this, and that's okay. I understand that. The reality is, a lot of them probably don't even know the demographics of the NFL newsroom, and that's not their fault. Here's the thing that struck me that I didn't even put together until after I was gone. If you exclude the reporters
Mm-hmm.
and look at the NFL Media Group newsroom, there is only one full-time black employee in that entire newsroom if you exclude the reporters. I mean, that's not only a travesty, I mean, that's just shameful. And so again, my point was, if you're going to report on a player population that's 60 to 70% black, they
Right.
deserve to have some sort of representation. People who have shared similar cultural experiences or life experiences or whatnot at the table when these decisions are being made. And it's not
Yeah.
there. To say you have no black manager, no black copy editors, no full-time black employees on the news desk, that's shameful, man. And
Yeah.
and the NFL should feel ashamed about that.
And then kind of like step back and say, hey, we've done all we can when it comes to the issue of diversity at the head coach or GM level. You blame owners for that when you need to sweep around your own front door. You know what I mean?
And that was my point.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, no, all facts as usual. Again, you're going to be at the Hall of Fame. You're going to be around royalty and the men who helped build this game and make it great. A lot of whom you had a hand in putting in the Hall of Fame as a member of the Hall of Fame selection committee. I guess what does this honor mean to you in that context, having been in the room where that happens?
Yeah, I haven't thought about it in that way. Because as a voter, honestly, I'm trying to do my job and I'm trying to, as best I can, um, be righteous towards the Hall of Fame, because I understand how much it means to these players. I'll never forget after Chris Carter finally got in after having to wait, and we know that was a tough wait for him. But that following summer, I had to go down to his house to do a piece for ESPN, and he took me into his office, and on the corner of his office desk was a photo album from the Hall of Fame weekend where he was inducted. And all of a sudden, Chris is really getting emotional about it and whatnot. And I always knew it was important to these men, but it was in that moment that I realized really how much it matters to them and why I have to take what I do so seriously when I step into that room to vote. So I haven't thought a lot about the players per se. What I have thought a lot about, to be frank with you, Michael, are my family and my professors. When I think about my mom and my dad just passed away a few months ago. My mom's
Yeah.
not in good health. Um, and then I think about my professors who had such an important part in this, and they're not here anymore. Dr. Lee Thornton and Professor Samuel Yett, and how they gave me the foundation to go and do what I do.
Yeah.
Really, those are the people I thought about the most.
Yeah.
Because I think it it almost means more to them than it does to me, because I still look at it as I'm just doing my job.
Yeah. And again, going back to Bill Nunn, you were at the forefront of the fight to get him posthumously inducted into the Hall of Fame. So again, it's just such poetic justice and so full circle for you to be
Oh
receiving the
yeah.
Bill Nunn Award, given your role in getting him finally, giving him his family their flowers, getting him in the Hall of Fame a couple of years ago. But so many people, and you mentioned, everybody brings up, the Super Bowl press conferences and how it ended the NFL media. So that's, people are even more so aware of you than they were before. But I wonder, and you talked about your professors and the people who opened the door for you. What other defining moment or moments do you think back to that shaped who you are, not just as a journalist, but as a husband, as a father, just as a man? But that when you, now that you've reached this place in your life and your career and this honor, you think back to, like, that's the defining moment for me. Not speaking facts, speaking truth to power at the Super Bowl, but that's who made me who I am.
Yeah, Michael, that's a question that I could take up the entire show with. I think it really goes back to just being a child, growing up in difficult circumstances, not having a lot of times. It's funny, I was thinking about this the other day. Walking into a store as a kid and having to use food stamps, and how embarrassed I felt, and how
Mm,
I told myself as a child, when I get older, I'm never going to be in a situation where I have to go out and get public assistance, that sort of thing.
mm,
And it sounds so trite and whatnot, but I never forget those days. I really don't.
yeah.
And, part of what I say in my speech is that, and I know people won't believe this, but there are a lot of days I wake up where I just say, I just don't want to embarrass myself. And I don't want to embarrass those who have helped me get to this point. And then that stays with
Mm,
me. And it stays with Black folk, period. When
yeah.
always feeling like we have to be 2 times as good and not giving the
Right.
same privileges to others and whatnot. So those experiences as a child growing up, as a young Black child, in difficult circumstances, one that they never leave you, and they lay that foundation, or at least for me, they
Mm.
did, in terms of how I wanted to conduct myself and what kind of success I wanted to have as an adult.
We never had that conversation, but it says a lot and it makes a lot of sense just knowing how you've done your job. Every conversation we've ever had about the NFL, even uncomfortable conversations, like, you've always brought hard news reporting, facts. Like, you've held yourself to that journalistic standard of, like you said, not embarrassing yourself. And for us, that's getting it wrong. You work so hard not to get it wrong. So you go from Stockton, California, to you representing the real HU, Howard University, to the San Diego Union Tribune, and Sports Illustrated, and ESPN, and NFL Media, and now to The Athletic. Um, Much like these players talk about, what was your welcome to the NFL moment, Jim Trotter?
Oh man, it was the first day I went in the locker room in the off season, and there were only 2 players in there at the time, and it was Junior Seau and another player, and the other player had disappeared. And Junior was walking towards the training room, and he saw me, and he turned around and called me over. I had never met him before. Obviously, I knew who he was. He introduces himself to me as if I needed to be introduced to him, like I didn't know who he was. And he's like, "Oh, you're the new guy," and I'm like, "Yeah." And, he said who I was and whatnot. And anyway, we had a quick conversation. At the end of it, he said to me, "Hey, take my number. If you ever need anything, you call me." And I
Wow.
thought he was BSing me, and I thought, I'm gonna call him. It's gonna be Domino's Pizza. And I called a few days later for something that had happened, and I got his voicemail. And shortly after, he hit me back, and I just realized what a real dude he was. And I realized where I was, and I knew that having someone like him um, take an interest in me, I was going to be okay. And the funny thing is people think that Junior fed me all kind of stories, and he did. He was so protective of his locker room. But what he did for me, Michael, is that he helped me understand the culture of a locker room, the culture of the NFL, and the mindset of a professional athlete. And it's for those things I will forever be indebted to.
I know what he meant to you, man, and I'm sure you'll say hello to his Hall of Fame bust, man, when you see him in Canton. Listen, I love you, brother. I'm proud of you. Go catch this flight. I ain't trying to make you late. Enjoy yourself. Well deserved.
I appreciate you.
And receive your flowers, man, because you've done a lot for this game, a lot for this business, and a lot for people like me. Thank you, Jim Trotter. Appreciate you.
It means a lot coming from you, Michael. I appreciate you, brother. All
right, brother. Safe travels. Hey, thanks so much for kicking it with your main man, Michael Smith. Be sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel, but also subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Rate it, review it, tell your friends about it. Oh, and be sure to follow me on social media.